My grandfather, who's still alive, thankfully, and is still going, pretty strong at 85, was a coal miner. So Pop was an independent coal miner, and my grandparents raised me from the time that I was 6 months old, and so I have these memories of my grandfather coming home from the coal mine and looking a whole lot like these guys look on the way out after a day of work. So they're coming up the slope, and so I found Joel Anderson is a local photographer who took pictures of some of the last independent anthracite coal miners in our area of Pennsylvania. It was such an important part of growing up that I wanted to get a picture like this. And I have a particular memory in my mind. Hey, Chad. So I have a particular memory in my mind that goes with the coal mining picture, and that is the only time I ever saw my grandfather at the mine was one day. I had to take my grandmother there because my great grandfather had heart attack symptoms, and it was interesting. This was before cell phones and GPS and all those kind of things. Nobody knew where the coal mine was in our family, immediate family, other than me, because I think I must have been 12 or 13 years old. But I used to go with my grandpa all the time to go pump water out of the coal mine when they were having problems with it, and so I knew where it was. It was like 10 miles down this dirt road off the beaten path. And so anyway, my grandmother and I drove back the dirt road, and this wasn't happy times, but it's a great memory for me. We got to the little coal mine, which is a lot like that one in the picture. Just a simple hole in the ground. My grandfather's one of my heroes, partially because he and these other guys went out in the woods, almost like the show Gold Rush in Alaska, and they dug a hole in the ground. They did whatever it takes to get coal out, and so that's how he fed our family when I was a kid. It was all about go in the ground, dig out enough coal, get paid for it, right, and not spend any more money, of course, than than what the value of the coal was. So anyway, that day we went to the coal mine, and the way it worked is there was a hoist house up top where it was ingenious. They used this old car that they had bought, and they used the engine from that car and the axle to turn a spool of cable. And so in that picture right there, those guys are coming up out of the ground and they're being hoisted, in a car that would have been like on a pitch, like on a slant going down the ground, and they're being hoisted up by a cable. There's a good chance those guys in that very photo right there, which is not my grandfather. I wish I had a photo of him. There's a good chance that they're being hoisted by a very similar device, something pulling on a cable like an old car. Anyway, we got to the coal mine, and we called down. We didn't call down. The operator called down into the mine where my grandfather was using this primitive phone system that they had strung together, and let my grandfather know that his dad was in the hospital and that he probably ought to come out. So we called him. He said, "Okay, I'll be up." And I went down, walked down this dirt hill, and I got down next to the mine portal, which, just in case anybody jumped on, looked kind of. The opening would have been a lot like where these guys are coming up out of the ground. But I scrambled down over the hill to this big like wooden structure that had the opening there, and like I'm looking down into the ground, and cables coming up, and I'd been there many times, and I'd been with my grandfather when the hoist was going up and down, but I never saw him come out of the ground. And so anyway, what happened was like cable noise and coming up, and I saw my grandfather emerge, much like those guys, and I saw his blackened face and the light, and and he must have been in his 50s at that time, and he was always a like strong man, like big hands, but when he stepped off of that mine transport, when my grandfather stepped out and into the sunlight with the coal dust on him and everything, it was awesome. Like he looked so powerful and so amazing. It's such a great memory. So when I found Joel Anderson's photo that showed those guys coming up out of the ground, I just knew I had to have it in my building here. And so I'm so grateful that Joel came out and he signed it and matted it and everything. And that speaks to my grandfather, who I think is a lot of where a strong work ethic came from. And watching my grandfather and those guys just go out in the woods and like just make it happen and not worry about are they doing it right or wrong or what. But they certainly had techniques to what they did, but they just like made shit happen. And there were setbacks all the time, and they just like kept going. And thinking about that in the context of life has served me really well. So the coal mining picture is important. And then on top of that, one of the first like work things I ever did was deliver coal with my grandfather, and it was the most simple business ever. Right, him and these guys had a dump truck, and it was at a time when there wasn't a lot of money coming out of the mine, but there was a lot of expenses, and so they got a dump truck, and they would share it. And my grandfather and I would go in the morning to pick up coal at the coal breaker, and then spend all day long working his little customer route. He had scheduled deliveries with these people, and I got to shovel out the coal at the end of the day because he didn't really want to climb up in the back of the truck to clear out the corners where it would accumulate and get it out the chute. So I used to do that with him, and it was just great memories of working with him. And he'd give me $1 or $2. It was about all he probably could afford, but it wasn't about that. It was